Hi, friends. Thank you for being with us today. This is Sunil Chandy. I'm here at Food for Thought, a program out of Christ Church Westerly. And again, thank you for being with us. And if you can say something, tell us that you're here. It would be really super. I'm looking at two different screens, one in front of me and also one on the side. There's someone. Natalie, thank you. Good afternoon to you. Thank you for being with us. I think, Jacqueline, you're also here. It didn't show up on the thing, but thank you for watching. And Jacqueline is our parish administrator. And of course, you just saw, look at that. Isn't that lovely? We've just got the Christchurch logo up there, Christchurch Westerly. So, and today it's Dave DeAngelis who's with us. I don't think Ben is with us today, but he's here taking care of everything. Oh, wait, is that Dave or is that Ben who's here? He said he's smiling. Oh, Ben. I think it's Ben who's here. I'm sorry. Thanks, Ben, for being here. Anyway, Betsy, I think you're here. Alan Lawton, you're here. Hello, Ann. Peace to you too, Ann, Deacon Ann. Betsy Rice, namaste, Betsy. Michelle, hello from Cape Coral. That's in Florida, I think. And thanks, Michelle, for being here. We miss having you here. When are you going to come back over to Westerly? Florida's, they've got beaches there, but we've got beaches here too. And so come back and be with us here at Christ Church. I'm sure that there are many other people watching on the various platforms, and hopefully they'll also say hello. This is, again, this is a really... the other day I was talking to some of my vestry people, and they asked me, "Aren't you tired of doing this almost every day?" And to tell you the truth, honestly, I'm not that very much tired. I am almost energized by it, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because every time we have a guest, I have these interesting conversations. And I gain insight from all these folks. And I'm hoping that you all do too. I hope that the conversations are enjoyable to you. I'm enjoying them. I love laughing with my parishioners, with my friends, with anyone that we have. I love also gaining the insights on how to deal with the challenges of the moment. And sometimes those challenges seem overwhelming to us. And and we're in a challenge, and this is the reason why we started this program, was in response to the COVID-19 situation that we have, a global challenge, a pandemic, a plague, biblical proportions, the many people who have passed on because of this COVID-19 virus, and also the fact that it's changing economies, it's changing the way we do things over the last 2 months, 3 months. It's going on 3 months now. And so we did this in response to that challenge. And the idea being that this show is to give us insight, help us to be able to connect with each other, help us to keep us encouraged and hopeful as we deal with this particular challenge. But these insights also, I think, will give us hope through any challenge that we're facing, especially as we move through this COVID-19 challenge, because this virus will be eradicated. We Americans and citizens of the globe are working to eradicate the virus. They're working together, collaborating in new and wonderful ways. God is working within our communities. There is a sense that we know that God is present with us as we face the COVID-19 challenge. But in the midst of this challenge, there are other challenges that have come up too, and challenges that are, as some really eloquent preachers have said, pandemics that affect our society and culture. One of which is racism. Now we see the racism, and maybe it's because we're sequestered in our homes and we're watching the TV, and maybe it's because of the confluence of all of these elements in our community and society that are happening right now. We all have you know, mobile phones that videotape things, and we're able to see things that we weren't able to see before. And so we're in an interesting time where we're at home, we're watching these video things, these videos of behavior of people, and that shows us in stark reality the reality of life for members of our community, for our community in general. And especially as, you know, and I'm specifically talking about videotapes that have recently come up, the George Floyd videotape of the death of George Floyd in the hands of 4 police officers, one of whom has been arrested for second-degree murder. And the emotions that come out of that, for all of us. You know, we were sequestered, and then all of a sudden now, for I think 15 to 21 days, I think it is, we're out there protesting. People are protesting. You know, we were called to be in socially distant, at the very beginning of the crisis, but now we're finding that as we're dealing with the other pandemics of our community, the racism that exists in our culture. People are protesting, and they're protesting, and there seems to be no, it's a colorblind protesting, I think. Protesting beyond color. It isn't just folks who are black or brown or yellow or white. It's just everyone. And it's not even, and I don't think it's necessarily against, we're thinking about racism within, and in particular about in its effect with the police forces, because we know that it isn't all police men who are victims of racism. Yeah, and I say victims because even the people who are formed by a system are victims of that system. Reactions happen because they are trained to. Behaviors become habits, and some habits, of course, as you all know, are not good for us, and so we have to find a way to change them. In the midst of that, we see I'm encouraged. You know, I'm encouraged about as people go and protest. I was at first a little hesitant, but I'm encouraged because, on the most part, most of those protests are peaceful, and that's where I'm hoping that people will keep it peaceful protesting, because that's where meaningful change happens. So, in our town of Westerly and in our own church community, we have 2 people that two wonderful parishioners who are engaged in the work of change. I mean, they are RaeVen and Sean Dinwoodie, and they're here. And RaeVen, you know RaeVen. RaeVen came and did this wonderful program on us about 3 weeks ago because she and a group of women from our congregation and outside of our congregation were making masks to protect and giving it away free, so that people will be protected. So that they would protect one another in our town of Westerly. And so we brought RaeVen on board, and she has this wonderful biography. She's a wonderful actress, and she does all sorts of she was a child actress and a star, and her husband Sean is a producer, and so we're lucky to have them. But they've been active in the protesting here in Westerly, and I thought it would be good to hear their story, to really see them and understand them and listen to them. So, Ben, please bring RaeVen and Sean on board. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Is anyone there? Hi, folks. Hi, Ben. Ben, okay, what's happening?
There we go.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I thought I lost you guys for a second.
No, we're still here.
All right, great. Well, I want to thank you all for being here. And, Sean, I love that beard.
Thank you so much.
Isn't he handsome?
Yep, this is the Corona beard. Started it when the lockdown started, so I'm trying to see how big it can get here. Really showing my Irish roots there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny that we have some of our parishioners. One of our parishioners, Alan Lawton, he might be watching today. I saw he came to one of our Bible studies, and
he's growing up here too.
Oh my God, it's down to here somewhere, and it's like he could. And you know what? I told him all he could do is put on a red hat, and he would be great as a gnome or something. Well, I want to thank you both for being here, part of our congregation. Sean, you've been a part of our congregation, this congregation, for most all of your life, haven't you?
Since birth.
Yeah, I was baptized at Christ Church. Grew up going to Sunday school and all of that. Being confirmed there at Westerly. Was an alkalite growing up there for many years. Was very active at going to ECC as a child, and then when I became a teenager, I became a counselor at the Episcopal Conference Center. And then ultimately I went out to Los Angeles and started working out there in film and television. But I'm a lifelong Episcopal and
yeah. Now, were you ever one of those trebles? Were you the singers with George Kent?
I did not, but I did. It's kind of odd. I think I was just too busy in different things as like kind of artist. I was involved in dance and theater things and all that kind of stuff. And so I did sing, and I was like in all the choirs at Stonington High School, and I was actually the president of the Music Honor Society over there. But I never actually did Christ Church choir.
Oh my God, I didn't. You know what? We need to set up something with Christ Church and do some kind of skit or something, I think
that would be fun. I would love to see Sean up there.
I would love to see both of you up there and maybe do something creative. It would be really cool.
I had fun at Vacation Bible School doing skits with the kids and stuff. That was fun.
I know they loved it too. You have a way with kids and with RaeVen, and we have a way with people, and just really appreciate it. Our first time meeting together was at the steps of Christ Church. You came there, I think,
on Easter.
On Easter, but the service times were changed, and you were pregnant with Weston at the time.
Yes.
And we prayed together, and it was just one of the most heartwarming times that I've ever had at that church. At the church.
Me too.
It was beautiful. And so the other thing is that Weston is celebrating his second birthday now, right?
Yes, Weston Warren is 2. This is his birthday week. So as you can see, we're actually having our pictures taken after this. That's why we're in our little Cookie Monster birthday shirts.
Oh, all right. Sounds good. And you'll see him a little bit later, I think, too, right?
Yes, he's little Elmo, yes.
All right. All right. Super. So, listen, there are a lot of things that's happening in the world right now. But Sean, I wanted to just focus in on, the other, we did a time where our church, our Sunday school, went to a farm recently, maybe 6 months ago or something.
Well, the corn maze.
Yeah.
The corn maze, where we got lost a little bit,
Halloween. It was Halloween.
It was Halloween, right?
Yeah.
And I was remembering, and RaeVen, you were, of course, I love you, and I think both of you, and I think the greatest things about you both. But I had a time at that day to speak with Sean. He was relaying a story to me about some of the things of a story of an interaction that you had in Los Angeles, and it brought me to tears. I mean, I went home and I was deeply moved, you know, and part of it is I wanted Sean, you if you could share that story with us, because you were seeing it from a person who loves RaeVen, and she was going through a really difficult time, and I know that there are other stories, but that one was the one that I just after you're telling me this, as we're walking through that maze, you're telling me the story, and I'm just understanding. I understood that, you know, some of the things that you've gone through, RaeVen, and this at a young age, but you know, and all of these events that happen in our lives are formative and help us to be who we are. And so, Sean, please share that story with me a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So first, I want to say thanks for having us on, and thanks for allowing the opportunity to share these kind of things. I really think that's one of the issues that a lot of white people come across, is that they don't allow themselves to actually have conversations about race. It's easy. A lot of times I find, you know, family members, friends, or whatever, reactions are they instantly shut down when you try to talk about it. And so you're more often met with a reaction when you try to relate something than someone actually just taking the time to listen. And so I invite everybody to, if I think if everybody can, in general, one of the biggest piece of advice I can give you is if you can start doing more listening and stop doing more talking, I think you'll come to a better place of understanding, because a lot of these stories and perspectives about race, even for myself, before I got involved in interracial relationship, you know, I didn't really understand. I still don't fully understand, because I myself am not a person of color, but I can relate a bit better because now I have a bit more of a personal perspective, you know, through the lens within my family. And so I just wanted to throw that out there before I relay this story. So like many people, RaeVen has multiple instances, like many people of color, many African Americans in this country have multiple instances that have happened to her where she was confronted, you know, with injustice, because that you know, just seemed racial. And so I'll relate this story that was I actually was a witness through by being on the phone with her at the time. This was about 4 years ago. We were in Los Angeles. It was
November 14th, 2014. I'll never forget this.
Yeah. So I was I was working a job. I was producing a live event for a speaker series, and we were creating a DVD product for it as well. And so I was directing and producing that, and I was about an hour, about 2 hours, I think, away. Actually, I was on the way in San Diego.
You were in San Diego.
I was over 2 hours away.
And I was in Pasadena.
And I am actually in the middle of the live production, and I get a phone call from RaeVen, and she's frantic, and she's like crying, and she's like, "Sean, I'm being arrested," and I was like, "What? You're being arrested? What is going on?" And
It's okay.
So instantly, you know, you feel helpless in a situation like that because you're not there. And so she tells me that I can hear the officer, you know, talking to her on the phone, telling her to like drop the phone, and she's like in between saying, you know, you're hurting me, this and that, and you know, she starts to relay to me what's happening, and saying that asking for the officer that the handcuffs are too tight and things, and she relays to me that she has what she should do at this point, that this officer is arresting her because she did it, saying that she didn't pay her subway fare. And so come to find,
which was $1.75, Father Sunil, and I had a receipt that I had shown them too of my purchase of the $1.75 ticket.
So I'll back up to what had happened before that. Was that she was going someplace to go watch some family members do some babysitting, was getting on the subway, had loaded money on her subway card, and had a receipt for that amount of money. And she had gone through the subway gate, and it seemed to only open halfway. So it did appear that there might have been a malfunction or whatever.
They have these things in LA called tap cards. And so once you put the money on it, you tap the card and then the partition goes up. Yeah. Well, I tapped several times and it still wouldn't go up, even though I had put money on it, loaded it, and had my receipt.
And then it finally wound up like opening up.
I had to hurry because the family members I was going to go watch their kid, they had dinner reservations and they never get a date night. So I was like, I got to get there.
So then it finally opened, but it only opened part way, and she went through the gate. And she gets on the subway, and they do random checks to make sure people are not, hopping free rides. And they go around and they come up to RaeVen and they scan her card. And he's like, oh, there seems to be a problem here. It says you didn't pay. And she's like, oh, well, I have my receipt for it here, and I did tap my card. The gate was acting kind of funny, but and so she had this conversation back and forth with this one officer, and
was calm the whole time, and referred to the officer as I've been trained by my family always when you're dealing with the police, because I have uncles and cousins that are police officers, so I have a lot of reverence and respect for them as first responders. You always address the officer in a calm, respectful tone, and you refer to them as sir and officer. Or if it's a female officer, ma'am and officer. And that's what I did.
So she then established with this officer that and came to an agreement that she would get off on the next stop and would re-tap her card to get that money deducted or whatever. As this conversation was starting to wrap up, another officer then came in. And he was the first officer was an African-American officer. The second officer coming in was a Caucasian officer, a white officer. And then he came in and he started right in saying, escalating the situation, saying, what's happening here? What's the problem? He said, well, it shows that her fare wasn't deducted on her card. And he instantly is instant reaction
it's
before
like, I'm gonna write you a ticket.
Before listening to even the other officer was, oh, well, she's getting a ticket, and starts to pull out his thing. And instantly, is like, and he's like, and so the other officer then kind of like backs up, and I don't know if he was a little more senior than him, not necessarily in rank, but whatever. And starts saying, well, what are you talking about? I have a receipt. I just talked to this other officer. And he's like, no, you're getting a ticket.
Because I explained, I didn't understand. I said, because the previous officer, who just happened to be African-American, Officer King, he had stated to me, okay, well, it didn't deduct from off your card. At the next stop, just go off, tap your card. I'll hold the door for you, and then you can come back.
So $1.75, $1.75, right?
Yeah. So
but Officer Hayhurst, the other officer, he was not happy.
So he escalates this. At this point, RaeVen decides that she wants to document this for herself, and she records it on her phone. She's like, okay, I'm going to,
witnesses are floored.
And then at this, I just want to record what's going on if you're going to give me a ticket, so that I have a record of what's happening here. And she starts to record it. And then the other officer takes this moment to then start to explain to the other officer what they had discussed. And he's like, oh, you already said that she could get off. And so he's like, yeah, I already told her that she could.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Okay, so he backs down and then says, okay, we'll wait till she gets off on the next stop. They get the stop pulls up. RaeVen gets off with her card and proceeds to go scan her card. She runs quickly.
While the Caucasian officer, Officer Hayhurst, is holding the door open for me. He's standing, so the automated doors don't close. He's standing there. So I run off. I tap my car. As I'm headed back, he removes his foot from holding the door and gives me a sinister grin and starts walking towards me. And he's like, "Give me your ID." And I'm like, "Officer, the doors, they're closing, officer." And I was like, "I got to get back on there." And he goes, "Give me your ID." And I said, "But I thought you were holding the door for me." And then all of a sudden the doors closed. And then in the other door frame, the African-American Officer King, he steps out and he walks over and he's just shocked. And he's just like, "What?" And then right away, he's like, "I said, give me your ID." And then he just grabs me.
Yeah, and then and he said he had enough of this. Then forcibly,
"I asked you twice for your ID and you didn't."
Forcibly grabs her and then proceeds to shove her up against a
metal bench.
Metal bench, and proceeds to start to handcuff her. And saying that you're under arrest. You're under arrest.
As he's he's jostling me and holding my arm. As he's doing that, I had, luckily, by the grace of God, because I was just videotaping them on my phone, I had my cell phone out. So I pressed Sean on speed dial. And that was when Sean came on the phone. And I'm like, "Sean," I'm like, dear, I'm being arrested." And then she heard everything else.
So there she is with her phone in her hand, her hands behind her back. She's trying to hold on to her phone for dear life because she's scared about what's happening and she wants somebody else to know what's going on. And so that's where I picked up in the conversation. Then I've tried to get her to calm down and relate what had happened. She was crying hysterically, and so I asked if I could speak to the officer, and he comes over and he talks to me on the phone, saying that she's refusing to give me her ID. And I had said, "RaeVen, are you not giving him?" And she said, "I will give him my ID. I can't
because I was in handcuffs."
Yeah,
already.
and I said, I said, "We will, we'll deal with what's going on later. We'll get the ticket and then we'll, look at disputing that later." And so, but he then said, "Nope, it's too late. She's getting arrested." And other officers have now approached. So now 4 more officers come in. And
so now I'm surrounded by 6 officers. And one of the officers said, "Well, you just can't take her back because we don't have any room in the jail." And we don't have any room at the jail.
He started saying,
goes, "Oh, well, I gotta go call and get permission now. See what you've done? Yeah. See what you've done? Now I gotta call my superior to get permission because you require jail. You require jail."
Yeah. So he had to actually, because he had to instead of bringing her to his regular station, they had to go to a separate station. So he needed separate approval for that. So he had to call a supervisor on the phone. I'm hearing all of this as this is going on. And so then
I'm telling them I'm a school. And then meanwhile, all this is going on. A lot of people, unfortunately, but, in Hollywood, it's common, if they run into a scuffle or anything, they're, "Oh, do you know who I am?" I'm not one of those type of people because it shouldn't matter. So I didn't bring that up, but I did bring up the fact that I am a law-abiding citizen. I mentioned to him that I am a LA Unified school teacher, that I had worked with schools in Beverly Hills and Los Angeles County School District.
RaeVen,
and that I said, "Do you know who you're trying to arrest right now?"
She's involved with the community here. She's been involved in the community in Los Angeles. RaeVen has multiple commendations from the mayor of Los Angeles, from other mayors around the country. I mean, RaeVen is about as kind and good and hearted and genuine a person as possible. So anyway, he then says that he calls up the supervisor and says to the supervisor on the phone that she's resisting and she's refusing to give her ID. And so, which was a direct lie. She just stated that that she needed to was going to give her ID. And so then he said, "Well, let me speak to her." RaeVen's frantic at this point, and so gives the phone to RaeVen, puts it up to her mouth or whatever, and she starts to relay the story. And RaeVen's very, very frantic. And then he's saying so she can't really talk. And so then he said, see, she's refusing to give me the ID, and cuts off the conversation and says,
Sean wasn't there physically, so he couldn't see. The officer had the phone up to me like this. And then as soon as I got to the part where I was talking about what he did, and I was telling him that how he let the doors close behind him, he ripped the phone away from my face, and he goes, see, she's not listening. And I said, if you take off the handcuffs, I'll give you my ID. I will. And he's like, it's too late. It's too late for that.
So he then lied to the supervisor on the phone and saying that she's still refusing the ID, which I heard him lie to a supervisor, and saying that she requires jail. So then he got the approval, and she proceeded to be arrested. She was so forcibly, during this whole time, by the way, she was yelling and pleading to have the handcuffs loosened because they were put on too tight. Finally, another officer, a female, came along and loosened them up, which it wasn't like it was a danger to do. It was totally possible. It was purposely clamped down. As a result, RaeVen had very bad bruising and sprained wrists, as well as the rough handling when she was tossed up against the bench, as well, tossed into the car. She had a sprained shoulder. Additionally, as she was being patted down, he took extra time in rubbing over her breasts and private regions.
And then he said, only after he did that to me, after he felt me up, he goes, oh, well, let me get a female officer to do this. But I don't want to get in any trouble, after he already did that. And then the female officer came over, she pat me down, and then he grabbed me, and then he basically said, he's like to the other officer, he goes, well, you know how these people are.
Yeah. So proceeded to then take her in the car. There was then a conversation on the radio where they called in to dispatch saying that they were bringing in a prisoner to the jail, and he said, oh, we have an African-American female, and we're coming to, to jail to bring her in. And she repeated back, an African-American female? And he said, yes, you heard that right. And then he said to his partner in the car, he said what? They don't think we can arrest females too? And
then they high-fived each other.
And then, they
started laughing about the fact that they had apprehended RaeVen. So she then went to jail, and then was proceeded to be treated like an animal there, where she was brought into a general cell that had, there was no, she wasn't allowed to use a regular toilet. She had to go to the bathroom. She was on her cycle at this time. She asked for feminine products and was actually, by this time, which I also had in my purse as well,
was visibly bleeding through her clothes, and was denied using any feminine products, was denied any toilet paper for several hours until it was finally thrown at her after her asking for it.
And they act like they didn't know where my bag was. I'm like, it's the brown Gucci bag that's just right over there. I said, if you could just please, and he's like, no, you're not getting any special treatment.
And then so at some point, one of somebody within the department, as they were, her name sounded familiar or something like that, realized that they had heard her name before or something, and looked up who she was, and it found out that she was an actress. And the tone just started changing, and they started trying to be very nice.
I saw them outside. Basically, I guess they Googled me or whatever. And because the one guy said, "Oh, what a pretty name! You sound like Ray." He said, "You look like somebody that's been on the Disney Channel before. That sounds like a girl from the Disney Channel." I said, "No, that's a different RaeVen, but I have been on the Disney Channel." And as soon as I said that, their faces went like this, and then they started Googling me. Next thing you know, they take off the handcuffs. They're coming in. They stop calling me girl and gal and things like that. Next thing you know, now they're calling me Miss Kelly. They offered me water. This is after I already have my menstrual blood all over my pants, down my leg, and everything.
This whole entire time, by the way, she had asked for an attorney several times and was denied an attorney. They then proceeded to come in and after now figuring out who she was, brought in the supervisor of the station, the captain or whatever his rank was, and he proceeds to bring in his body cam and wants RaeVen to. He's saying, holding up his camera to her, saying, "Okay, now you're okay. This was all just a misunderstanding, right? You weren't injured in any way or anything," because she was complaining that she wanted to go to the hospital at this point. And so she said, "No, I need to go to the hospital."
Because part of my injuries, what people don't understand is, which I hope nobody has to understand this. So I hope that no one has to go through this. But when you're arrested in the police, I never knew this because I've never been in the backseat of a police car in my life. But their seats are not cushioned. It's hard like plastic. And so when they put me in, he pushed me in on the side and my shoulder was like this.
Oh my God.
And so my shoulder got dislocated almost and so
it was a serious sprain on her shoulder, and she was in serious pain. She couldn't really move that one arm. So she wanted to go to the hospital and was asking to go to the hospital for multiple hours. And they were trying to make light of it, and they didn't want the report of her going to the hospital or whatever. So they were trying to deny that.
And they said if we take her later, then the bruising, because you see how dark my skin is.
Yes.
Like for me to be like black and blue, you know what I mean? For me to turn purple and blue on my wrist, it had to be bad. They wanted to wait so that it would go down so it wouldn't be so bad when they took me in for their records.
Yeah. So finally they allowed her to go to the hospital. They did the parade walk where basically they brought her in full shackles
and chains
through chain shackles, walking through in front of everybody through the main entrance of the emergency room.
One of the things that really broke my heart was there were some moms that have little ones with them in the emergency waiting room. And after years of me being not only a school teacher, but a babysitter and a Sunday school teacher, even at Christ Church, a Sunday school teacher, to have a mother remove their child from my way, there were moms and they were moving their children away from me because I'm a criminal, because I'm coming in being escorted in shackles and chains. And so they're just like, "Oh, she's so, scary." And I'm crying. This was at USC Keck School of Medicine.
And so again, this is only for $1.75.
Yeah, which she has a receipt for that actual transaction.
Right.
So they recognized her in the hospital, and they were then she became the talk of here's this person who is on the Disney Channel and movies and things like that. Little kids are recognizing, and here she is, in shackles being brought through the hospital. So she received the care there. May I just kind of wrap up the story. When she got back there, it was the same thing. They again and again wanted her to lie and say that she was not mistreated in any way. We kept on trying to record her saying that, and kept saying basically if she said that she wouldn't be charged with anything. RaeVen would not say that.
So they said to me, basically were asking me to tell a fib. They wanted me to lie, Father. Right. They said to me, if you want to go to the hospital, we're going to have to book you because you now become property of us. You're a prisoner. And so in order to transport a prisoner to the hospital, we have to fingerprint you and everything and put you in the system. Yeah. And you say, as of right now, you don't have a record. So why don't you just say that you weren't hurt, that this was all just a big misunderstanding, okay? And we'll all act like this never happened. Just say that you're not harmed, and right. You can just walk out of here now. And so I told them, no, I want to be seen by a doctor because I was in that much pain.
So that's how that resulted in her facing charges and which she ultimately, unfortunately, because of a whole other story, we weren't able to get as high a caliber attorney as possible. We kind of just got someone that's marginally better than a public defender. And basically was only just got her a reduced sentence to a lower
because of my financial situation.
A lower crime, basically, still a misdemeanor, which she wound up just pleading to having to plead no contest to. Basically disturbing the peace because she was yelling too loud. But what she was originally charged with was resisting arrest,
being loud and boisterous,
and being loud and boisterous to the officers, which were both misdemeanors, and she could have gone to jail. I think it was up to 5 years for each charge. So
instead of getting the possible, 5 to 10 years of jail, my attorney was able to get me a reduced sentence, and basically no jail time, and they ruled for me to have the judge said that I needed to have because I was charged with loud and boisterous and resisting arrest. I needed to be taught a lesson, so I needed to have a year of anger management training.
Yeah, she had to have a year of anger management training.
So every week I had to go and have a paper signed off by
and probation for a year. So that was the result of that whole situation and what happened. And that's
which, on a positive note, because I always look for the silver lining, but the anger management classes and all of that and the counseling. I'm in the room, just so you know, I'm in the room with people that have, stabbed people at work. I'm in the room with another guy that's sitting next to me. He threw a desk at his professor. This is who I'm amongst. I would never do these things, but this is who I'm scared of, the people that I'm in the anger management with. But there was a silver lining. Some of the tools with the anger management program, with that, they teach you EBT. And so it's like behavioral things, and it helped me deal with my pain from, having my financial situation with my parents, and then, with the financial abuse from that relationship. So it did help in that way. So God always has a bigger vision, God always knows, but that's what happened.
But yeah, so that's just, one example of stuff. I'll just relate one other I'm going to make this short story very, very, very short. There's many details, but I'll make it very fast because I do get the thing. Well, that's, a big city, or that's down south, I often come across that when I try to discuss issues of racial injustice and things. And so, we had a situation just here locally 1 year ago where RaeVen was walking to a doctor's appointment with our son in the stroller, just up the street from our house to go to a doctor's appointment. And there was slightly raining out, and so she was kind of taking her time going, being careful because it's a busy road. And when she was stopped by a police car, and they got out and said,
is this your baby?
Is this your child? Is this your white child? Whose baby is this?
We got a call that a black female had left a white baby abandoned in a stroller. And I was just like, no. I said, I'm on my way to the doctor's appointment. And I said, I'm just trying to hurry up now. I said, because it's starting to pour, as you can see more. And he's just like, give me your ID.
Yeah.
And so right in that moment, I had like, it was a trigger for me. And I was just like, okay. Yeah. And I reached and gave him my passport ID.
And she's starting to cry because obviously, she has some PTSD and trauma from previous incidents. And so, Weston Warren, he's crying. They then refused to believe that she wasn't like mentally unstable or something like that, and they refused to let her go.
And I said, please, I have a doctor's appointment right here. And they're like, and he's like, oh yeah, you have a doctor's appointment? They didn't believe me. So he said, if you have a doctor's appointment, if you're telling the truth, then we'll see about that, because we're going to escort you in. So both officers escorted me with the stroller with Weston Warren. I'm embarrassed now. I'm being now escorted by local police into my doctor's appointment. This is right here on Broad Street, right here in Stonington in Pawcatuck.
And they had taken her ID and wouldn't give it back to her.
My therapist,
it wasn't.
Thank God for Diane Loomis-Setz.
Had to convince them that she was his mother. She wasn't placing him in any danger, and because they wanted to basically keep her ID, and they wanted to separate Weston Warren and make a DCS.
And my therapist, she called it out. She says, I just want you to know I'm calling this out as a white woman. This is totally truculent behavior. This is despicable. She's like, had it not been for your white therapist right now, you would be in a whole different situation. They would have taken this baby from you. And she's like, I'm the reason you're getting this back. And she gave me back my passport.
So that's a local.
That happened a year and a half ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is why it's important for us. We want to ask people, people can protest and all that, but we want to be about peace, Father Sunil. And that's why I told you I'm going to do the peace rally. And we invite people to come. It's going to be this Friday at the post office in downtown Westerly. We thought about moving it up a little earlier because we didn't want to interfere with local business and stuff. But we have found out there's already 2 other protests that are going on, peaceful protests at that time right there. So we just figured we might as well just keep it the same. But we're going to be there at 5 o'clock on Juneteenth. And for those of you that don't know what Juneteenth is, basically we all know about, the story of, Abraham Lincoln writing, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation in September 22nd of 1862. It was put into effect January 1st of the following year. So that's 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation, for those of you that don't know, freed the slaves. Okay, it ended slavery. Well, it ended slavery for not everybody in the South. It took a whole 2 years later. It wasn't until a Union general, General Gordon Granger of the Union Army, he came in and brought troops. Federal troops had to come to Texas because slavery was still happening alive and well. Even 2 years after Lincoln freed the slaves, General Gordon came in, General Gordon Granger and his federal troops on June 19th. That's why we call it Juneteenth. June 19th, 1865. He announced that from now on, he took control. The federal troops took control of Texas. And this was in Galveston, Texas. And that was the end of slavery. And that's why with the Juneteenth flag, it is red, black, it's red, white, and blue to show that Black people are Americans as well. And so on Juneteenth, basically that the colors are the same colors of the American flag. Sorry, I get emotional when I tell it. But that is to echo that the enslaved Black people and their descendants, like myself and my son, We are no longer property, but we are Americans too. And so that's what we're celebrating. And Sean and I have both reached out to local Westerly Police Department and the Stonington Police Department to participate in our peace rally. Sean's called several times and left messages for us to have one of our police officers, one of our local good police officer heroes, to come and say a few words for just a couple of minutes about promoting positive relationships between people of color and the police, and also peaceful protesters, because we are absolutely against and we rebuke all looting. And we want to promote peace and unity within our town of Pawcatuck Westerly.
Right. And
that's what our thing is about.
That's, you know, there's a lot of misinformation out there regarding the protests and what they're seeking, and that they hate police officers, and it's very far from the truth. I mean, obviously in every situation there's those, you know, extreme people who are just, you know, don't have good attitudes or whatever, but the overwhelming majority of the people protesting, you know, they like police officers, they like the police. What they don't like is,
it is possible to be pro Black Lives Matter and pro Blue Lives Matter. It is possible to conjoin those two, because our police officers are a part of keeping the police.
Yeah.
Of keeping the peace, and, you know, and we have to respect them. The issue comes involved when the people that are charged to protect us, what do we do as people of color? What do we do as Latinos, as Blacks, as Indians, as Native Americans, as Middle Easterners? What do we do when the people that are charged with protecting us are the ones that are betraying us?
Right.
What do we do?
There's two issues. Is that, you know, as we were discussing in those stories, there are, as anywhere, there are bad police officers. There's bad preachers. There's bad black
people. There's thugs. There's bad white people.
But what has happened in our justice system, unfortunately, and with police departments around the country, is that there hasn't really been a level of accountability for those bad officers. The same kind of situation that, if we want to make a comparison, the accountability of pastors that the Catholic Church are dealing with their priests. Right. And so when we don't hold those bad individuals accountable, then it's like a cancer within our organization, and it allows. And
just like with anything, you know, like I said, there's white thugs and there's white angels. There's black thugs and black angels. You know what I'm saying? There's good and bad in everything, but we have to come together and be one.
And then one other thing is that there's the other side of that is the disparities, though, in how justice is then delivered to races. And we can look at those things statistically and see that disproportionately people of color, particularly African Americans, are handled justice. They see a different kind of justice than white people receive in this country. I'm not going to give a ton of statistics. You can look them up, but I'll just give you a couple. Here, as an example.
Sean, I think we're over like an hour of the programming.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, look, this is not an easy subject. And you know, my reaction is that I'm just so glad that you're willing to share your story. And the thing is, to know, and you're loved in our community, in our church, you know, no one in our church, you know, my hope is, and we know it is, you know, this is what our goal is. You know, this is what Jesus calls us to. Jesus calls us to all realize that we're all children of God, needing to be treated with the dignity that every human being deserves as a child of God. And this story, RaeVen, breaks my heart. And I know that people in Westerly, their heart will break when they hear it. You know, and it's a hard story because we want everything to be okay. We want life to be free and just and for everyone. And when we hear that it isn't just for everyone, we don't want to hear that, and we try to move away from it. I know a lot of good cops and a lot of good police officers.
And I do too. They're in my family. That's why
I know. We both know. We all know.
For them to be a part of the peace rally, people have to know that we have to give people hope that there are good officers out there that are fighting for peace.
And you give us hope, right? By not letting the anger, not letting the frustration of what you've been through change your view of all people.
Forgiveness,
and it's hard. I mean, forgiveness.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, but I, and we only have it's actually a 30-minute show. This deserves so much more. Just know that our people love you. That your people, you're our people. We're our people. We're Christ people.
Amen.
And so Friday at 5:00.
Yes, Friday,
Juneteenth, which is June 19th. And by the way,
at the Westerly Post Office.
That was declared a state holiday in 1980, and ever since, all around the world, they celebrated Juneteenth.
I will be there with you. And
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
If it's okay with you, I'd love to say a prayer.
I'd love for you to open it in prayer. That would be awesome.
I'll be there with you. And just know that Christ Church is there with you. Because you're part of our family. And whatever pain that you've had, and we all share in it. And I don't know where it's going to go, but I know that God, when God hears our cries, and there are God's people all over, as you know, not only in our church and in our community, but in our police department too. And we'll be praying for change, and we'll be acting for it. God bless you both. I know we wanted to do so much more, but I just we'll do it another time. Okay?
Sounds good, Father.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. God bless you. Namaste.
Namaste. Folks, I'm sorry to indulge you with I'm actually not sorry. If you can make it and listen to it, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Let's pray together. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Jesus Christ, you traveled through towns and villages, curing every disease and illness. At your command, the sick were made well. Come to our aid now in the midst of the global spread of the coronavirus. Heal those who are sick with the virus. May they regain their strength and health through quality medical care. Heal us also from our fears, which prevents nations from working together, neighbors from helping one another. Be present with those in authority who are making hard decisions. Support the medical professionals, emergency responders, and our caregivers. Be with our teachers, our students, our pastors, our counselors. And be with our police, and be with those who call change to happen within our police and all emergency personnel. Be with those who are struggling with racism. Be with us. Help us to realize that we are called to be children of God and called to the kingdom that you proclaim, the kingdom of justice and of hope. We ask your blessings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, go in peace and spread the light of God. The world needs it right now. Thank you.